My neighbor demanded I stop using my fire pit because the smoke bothers my family. When I refused, he walked into my yard and dumped a bucket of water on the fire, sneering, "Problem solved." My friends looked on in silence as I pulled out my phone and said, "Then let's see how fast you get a trespassing charge." I live in a quiet neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois. My backyard has always been my retreat after long days working as a mechanic. I built a fire pit there, following the city's regulations. It's less than 3 feet in diameter, the flames stay under 2 feet high, and I only burn dry wood. I always keep a hose nearby and never leave the fire unattended. One Friday evening in early October, I invited a few friends over. The air was crisp and the fire added warmth. We sat around, sharing stories and enjoying the night. Around 8 p.m., as the fire crackled and our laughter filled the air, I noticed Tom, my neighbor, standing at the fence. Tom is in his late 40s, stocky, with a perpetual scowl. "Jim," he called out, his voice sharp. "That smoke's drifting into our house. My wife has asthma and it's triggering her symptoms. Can you put the fire out?" I was taken aback. Tom and I had always exchanged polite nods, but never had a real conversation. I responded, "Tom, I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't realize the smoke was causing issues. We're keeping the fire small and within regulations." He frowned. "Regulations or not, it's affecting my family. I'm asking you to put it out." I glanced at my friends, then back at Tom. "I understand your concern. We'll keep the fire low and monitor the smoke. If it gets worse, I'll put it out." Tom's eyes narrowed. "That's not good enough." He turned and walked back into his house without another word. We continued our evening, ensuring the fire remained small. The smoke seemed minimal, and the wind was gentle, carrying most of it upward. Around 9 p.m., as I added another log, I heard Tom's gate open. He walked into my yard, holding a bucket. Without hesitation, he approached the fire pit and dumped water onto the flames. The fire hissed and went out, smoke rising from the wet wood. "Problem solved," he said, a smirk on his face. I stood up, my heart pounding. "Tom, you just entered my property without permission and extinguished my fire." He shrugged. "Had to be done." I pulled out my phone. "Then let's see how fast you get a trespassing charge." His smirk faded. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his house. The next morning, I called the Springfield Police Department's non-emergency line and reported the incident. An officer came by later that day. I explained what happened, emphasizing that Tom entered my property without permission. The officer nodded. "We've had reports about him before. We'll have a chat with him." Later that afternoon, I saw a police car in Tom's driveway. The officer spoke with him for about 15 minutes before leaving. Tom didn't look my way. A few days passed without incident. Then, one evening, I noticed a letter in my mailbox from the city's code enforcement. It stated that a complaint had been filed about my fire pit and that an inspection was scheduled. The inspector arrived the next day. After measuring and checking the setup, he said, "Everything seems to be in order. Just ensure you're mindful of the smoke, especially if neighbors have health concerns." I agreed, and he left without issuing any citations. That evening, I decided to approach Tom to mend fences. I knocked on his door. He opened it, looking surprised. "Tom, I want to apologize for any distress the fire pit caused your family. I wasn't aware of your wife's condition. I'd like us to find a way to coexist peacefully." He sighed. "I appreciate that, Jim. But the smoke really does affect her. Maybe you can use the fire pit when the windows are closed, or on days she's not feeling as sensitive." I nodded. "That's fair. I'll be more mindful." We shook hands, hoping to put the incident behind us. But tensions remained, and I had a feeling this wasn't the end of our disputes. 2 weeks went by. Things were quiet. Tom didn't say anything to me, and I didn't use the fire pit. I figured we were just going to avoid each other for a while, and honestly, I was okay with that. Then one night, around 11 p.m., I was woken up by flashing lights outside my bedroom window. Blue and red lit up my walls. I jumped out of bed, pulled on a hoodie, and stepped outside. A fire truck and 2 cop cars were parked in front of my house. I ran to the front yard barefoot, heart racing. "What's going on?" I asked one of the officers. "We got a call about an open fire in your backyard," he said, pointing his flashlight toward the side gate. I stared at him. "I haven't used the fire pit in over 2 weeks. There's no fire." One of the firefighters came back from my yard shaking his head. "No fire back there. Just some ashes in a pit. Cold." The officer gave me a look. "We'll need to make a report anyway." False alarm. I followed him to his car, shivering in the cold. "Who called it in?" He didn't have to say it. I already knew. I stood in the middle of my front lawn, arms crossed, watching them leave one by one. Then I looked over at Tom's house. A light turned off in one of the upstairs windows. The next morning, I checked my doorbell camera footage. Nothing unusual, just a car driving by slowly around 10:45 p.m. But I couldn't prove anything, and it didn't matter. He had made a move. So I documented everything. The report from the fire department. The police visit. The time. The date. I created a folder on my computer and labeled it Tom. I didn't touch the fire pit for another week. But then a friend asked to borrow my backyard for his kid's birthday party. They just wanted to roast some marshmallows. I said yes. It was a small gathering, maybe 8 people total, mostly parents and 2 kids. The fire was tiny. Controlled. Halfway through the party, a drone started buzzing overhead. Everyone looked up. It hovered directly above the fire pit. "What the hell?" someone muttered. I looked over the fence. Tom's backyard was dark, but the drone came from that direction. I grabbed a broom and swung it at the drone. It backed off, then zipped upward and disappeared into the night. I called the non-emergency police line again. When the officer showed up, I played the video from my friend's phone. The drone clearly hovered directly above us, then flew off in the direction of Tom's house. "I'm not saying it's his," I told the cop. "But it came from his side and left that way." The officer nodded. "Drones can't just fly over private property and record without consent. That's a privacy issue. You want to press it?" "Absolutely." The cop walked next door. I stayed outside, arms crossed, jaw tight. Tom answered. They talked. Then the officer came back. "He says he wasn't flying a drone tonight. No way to prove otherwise unless you caught him on camera controlling it." Of course I didn't. And just like that, he got away with it again. The next day, things escalated. I woke up to my trash cans knocked over, garbage all over my driveway. One of my side mirrors was pushed in. My mailbox was leaning. That afternoon, I installed 2 more cameras. One facing the driveway. One pointing straight at Tom's yard. I didn't say a word to him. I didn't knock on his door. I didn't even look at his house. But I documented everything. I added new folders to the Tom file: photos, police reports, drone footage. I started noticing things. A car that always drove slow past my house, especially late at night. A neighbor who used to wave stopped talking to me. I wasn't sure if Tom was spreading rumors, but I kept to myself. Then one day, I got a letter from the HOA. "Your backyard fire pit is generating complaints. Several residents have raised health and safety concerns. We will be discussing possible action at the next HOA meeting." Several residents? I went door to door. 6 houses on our street. Only 2 had windows that even faced my backyard. One belonged to Tom. The other belonged to Mrs. Cardwell, an 84-year-old widow who had trouble walking. I knocked on her door. "Mrs. Cardwell, sorry to bother you. Did you happen to make any complaints about my backyard fire pit?" She looked confused. "No, dear. I don't even know how to make a complaint. I just read my books and drink tea." "Why?" I thanked her and walked away, fists clenched. At the HOA meeting, I showed up with printed copies of the city fire codes, a binder with timestamps of all backyard use, drone footage, and police reports. When the board brought up the complaints, I asked who filed them. "We can't disclose that information," the president said. I slammed the binder down. "Then let me show you what's been happening to me for the last month. This isn't about fire safety. This is targeted harassment. And if you all don't start paying attention, I'll take this entire folder to my lawyer." They went silent. Tom, sitting across the room, didn't say a word. Just stared at me with that same blank look he always had. After the meeting, as people left, he walked by and muttered under his breath, "You're making this a lot harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. But I added that quote to my file. 2 days after the HOA meeting, a city official showed up at my door. She had a clipboard and a forced smile. "We received a tip about possible code violations on your property. Mind if I take a look?" I knew damn well where that tip came from. I stepped aside and let her walk around. She checked the height of my fence, measured the distance between the fire pit and the house, took notes on a small patch of weeds behind my shed. "This needs to be trimmed," she said, pointing. "Weeds can't exceed 10 inches. "Okay, I'll take care of it." She nodded, scribbled a note, and left without another word. I closed the door and just stood there, silent. He was trying to bury me in complaints. Death by paperwork. That night, I turned on my cameras and stayed up watching the feeds. Around 2:13 a.m., the motion alert pinged. I rewound the footage and froze. A figure, hoodie up, flashlight pointed at the ground, walking along my side fence. They stopped, crouched near my trash bins, then disappeared into the shadows. I downloaded the footage and enhanced it best I could. Couldn't see the face. But the gait, the posture, it was familiar. Too familiar. At 8 a.m., I took the footage straight to the police. The officer reviewed it and nodded. "Looks like someone was casing your yard. We'll increase patrols in the area. Can I press charges if I figure out who it is?" He shrugged. "We'd need a clear ID. Without a face or an admission, it's tricky." I left feeling like I was running out of options. Then the real twist came. One of my neighbors, Rick, a guy I barely talked to, stopped me as I was getting my mail. "Hey Jim," he said, glancing around before lowering his voice. "I think you should know something. Tom's been going door to door, telling people you're filming their houses, that you're spying on their families. He even said you threatened him with a bat." I blinked. "What?" "I haven't even spoken to the guy since the HOA meeting." Rick nodded. "I know. That's why I'm telling you. Some people believe him, especially the new folks who don't know you. He's trying to poison the well." I thanked Rick and went back inside. That explained the sideways glances, the cold shoulders. He was building a narrative. That night, I typed up a letter. 2 pages. I detailed everything. The fire pit complaint, the drone, the trash, the visit from the city. I included timestamps, officer names, and case numbers. I listed the actual city ordinances. I printed 30 copies and dropped one in every single mailbox on the street. The next day, I stayed inside, kept the blinds down, waited. By noon, I'd gotten 4 texts from neighbors I didn't even know that well. "Thanks for the info. Didn't realize how far this had gone. Sorry for judging without facts. Let us know if you need anything." I didn't hear anything from Tom that day. But the silence didn't last. 2 nights later, someone slashed my tires. All 4 of them. On my truck and my wife's car. No witnesses. No video. Whoever did it knew where the blind spots were. I filed another report. Officer took photos. Made notes. Said the usual, "We'll investigate." My insurance covered the cost, but that wasn't the point. Tom wasn't just harassing me anymore. He was trying to break me. I took a week off work. Installed new lights. More cameras. A second fence inside the first. I cleaned every corner of my yard, trimmed every weed. I even repainted the shed. I was going to make it impossible for him to touch me. But then another twist, something I didn't expect. Tom's wife showed up at my door. She looked tired. Pale. She was holding something in her hands, a small inhaler. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded cautiously. She stepped inside and sat down at the kitchen table. Her hands shook. "I didn't know everything that was going on until recently," she said. "Tom's been spiraling. He's convinced you're trying to destroy him, that you're turning the neighborhood against us." I stayed quiet. "I don't agree with what he's done, but he's not well. He won't get help. And I'm scared." That hit harder than anything else had. I leaned forward. Scared of what? She looked down. Of what he might do next. Then she placed the inhaler on the table. He lied. I don't have asthma. That was never true. I told him not to lie about it. He said it was the only way to make you listen. My hands clenched the edge of the table. She looked up. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was going this far. The drones. The trash. I just thought he was angry about smoke. I asked her, why are you telling me this now? Because I'm leaving him. Tomorrow. I already packed a bag. My sister's coming to get me. I wanted you to know the truth before I go. I sat there stunned. She got up quietly and left. That night, I barely slept. And for the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was worried. Because people like Tom, when they feel like they're losing, don't go quiet. They get worse. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No cops. No drones. No garbage in my driveway. But the quiet wasn't peace. It was buildup. It felt like a pressure cooker with the lid barely hanging on. Tom's wife left. I saw her suitcase in the back seat as her sister drove off. She didn't look back. That same night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was late, close to midnight. I know what you're doing, the voice said. It was Tom. He sounded off, slurred, shaky. You're turning everyone against me. You think you've won? I'm not done with you. Click. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the porch light on and my phone in my hand. But nothing happened. The next morning, my power went out. Whole house dead. I walked outside. My neighbors still had lights. Checked the breaker, fine. Something felt wrong. I followed the line around the side of the house. That's when I saw it. The meter box had been tampered with. Wires yanked. Cut. I called the electric company and the police. The officer who showed up was the same one from the fire pit incident. He looked at the damage and sighed. You need to get a restraining order. I nodded. Already in the process. But I had hit a limit. All this time, I played by the rules. I filed reports. I kept proof. I was calm. I stayed legal. Tom didn't. So I changed the game. I hired a lawyer. Not just for the restraining order. I wanted a full civil suit. Harassment. Defamation. Property damage. I gave the lawyer everything: videos, reports, statements, the letter from his wife. We started with the restraining order. A judge signed off. Tom was served 3 days later. That same night, he lost it. I was watching the camera feed when it happened. 2:41 a.m. Tom stumbled into the yard. Drunk. Holding something, a gas can. He didn't know I had replaced the old cameras with new ones, infrared, motion tracking, backed up to cloud storage. I called 911 and watched in silence as he poured gasoline around the edge of my fence. He struck a match. I didn't even have to wait. Flashing lights filled the street within minutes. The fire never caught. Police tackled him on my lawn, the match still in his hand. They cuffed him and shoved him into the back of the cruiser. I stood on the porch. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. He looked at me once before they drove off. His face was blank. Like all the rage had drained out and left nothing behind. It didn't end there. Tom was charged with attempted arson, trespassing, violating a restraining order, and destruction of property. His trial was short. Guilty. He got 3 years in state prison. The civil suit followed. With his criminal record, he didn't stand a chance. The court awarded me damages, enough to fix my fence, replace every camera, and then some. But the biggest blow wasn't the money or the sentence. It was the foreclosure sign that showed up in front of his house 2 months later. Without his wife, without a job, with legal fees piling up, Tom lost everything. I watched from my porch as a moving truck hauled away what little he had left. The bank took the house. New neighbors moved in, quiet family, nice people. They invited me over for barbecue the first weekend. We laughed around their fire pit. No complaints. No drama. But even now, every time I hear a knock at the door late at night, I feel that jolt in my chest. Because I made a mistake too. I waited too long. I let things slide. I gave him chances. I tried to be decent. And all it did was give him time to get worse. He tried to burn down my house. He tried to ruin my life. So no, I don't regret pressing charges. I don't regret taking it to court. I don't regret watching him lose everything. Some people only understand pain. And he finally got his.